Some ground soaks in the moisture while other areas deal with a disaster. Take a look at hail damage, and we have the latest drought monitor report. Meat goats are growing in popularity, and now may be the time. Some of you farmers and ranchers need to see a doctor. That's all right now on NTV's Grow. Many areas got some much needed rain within the last couple of weeks. Let's go ahead and take a look at the latest drought monitor. The last few soakers did have an impact. 7% of Nebraska was in extreme drought just a week ago. Now, virtually none of the state is in that category. Severe and moderate drought categories have also lessened. However, 70% of the state is still in the yellow, meaning abnormally dry. Besides a few inches of welcome rain, some got a dose of stuff they didn't want to see: tornadoes and hail. NTV's Sarah Kirkley has more.
It will still be a while before we know the full extent of the damage from this storm, or if it will impact you at the grocery store. That's because farmers have some big decisions to make in the coming weeks. Kurt and Cale Carlson are showing off their damage to about 100 other farmers, many with their own.
In my 40 years of farming, I've never had this early of a hailstorm and this devastating for all of our acres.
It's going to be far-reaching. I mean, we have, in some cases, good hope that we're going to have recovery.
It's why these farmers are turning to UNL Extension educators, asking if they should replant.
Unfortunately, in a lot of the instances out here, because of the herbicide choices they made, they may have to come back with corn or sorghum.
But educators say farmers could take a 40% hit in yield if they plant corn now.
Even the early season corns may be stressed a little bit on whether they'll reach physiological maturity by the time we get that first fall freeze.
As decisions loom, the Carlsons are still waiting on their insurance adjuster to get the full extent of the damage.
There's such a backup.
Their entire soybean crop will likely need to be replanted, they say, but they could be relying on insurance in other fields.
We would rather have a crop, but in this situation we don't have a choice, so the insurance will play a big part in helping us continue to be farmers.
Experts say this colder, wet weather is not helping with crop recovery, so they're hoping for sunshine. And if you weren't one of the 200 farmers that attended these two meetings today, UNL educators urge producers to visit their website. A lot of good information there, and we'll have the link on our website, Nebraska.tv.
Recent rains are reflected in the most recent USDA crop progress report for Nebraska. Alfalfa harvest has been slow due to wet conditions. Dry bean planting continues in western Nebraska. Pastures have improved with recent rains. 70% of topsoil now rates adequate, and only 6% of corn and soybeans rate poor. So it's so far so good for the row crops. And that latest government snapshot shows an even lower forecast for the nation's drought-stricken winter wheat crop. The National Agricultural Statistics Service estimates farmers will bring in 2.3 billion bushels of winter wheat. That's down 2% from a month ago and 10% from last year. And an even bigger drop was estimated for the nation's hard red winter wheat crop. And that's the type grown primarily to make bread. That estimate is down 3% from a month ago. The fight is on against a pig virus, and now the money is there to back it up. Porcine epidemic diarrhea virus, or PEDV, kills baby pigs, putting significant stress on prices and producers. The USDA announced over $26 million in funding and issued a federal order to require reporting of new detections. It does not pose any risk to humans or to food safety. Secretary Vilsack says in the last year, the industry estimated PEDV killed some 7 million piglets and caused tremendous hardship for many American pork producers. The money will be used to support producers and combat these diseases, including developing vaccines, supporting management, and testing. Most of us have certainly noticed higher milk prices at the grocery store recently. The Bureau of Labor Statistics says a gallon of fortified whole milk cost $3.69 last month. That's a 7.5% increase from a year ago, the highest price in about 2.5 years. Analysts blame China and Latin American countries for the high demand and higher prices. Food prices may be going up, and so are food exports. A new report from the USDA predicts the U.S. will export almost $150 billion worth of fruit, vegetables, grain, and meat in 2014, a record amount. Kansas State University experts say the increase is because of the growth in other countries. Now, that's good news for U.S. egg producers getting more money for their products. It does mean higher prices for our food, but also better trade opportunities for other products like rubber and cell phone chips. And economists expect the number of exports to continue to grow.
Economic growth outside the U.S. continues to be fairly strong, right? It changes over time, but in many cases it's stronger than the U.S. Couple that with population growth means there's demand for many food products we produce here, and in economist speak, it's being bid out of the U.S. into other consumers' hands.
The volume of agricultural exports from 2013 to 2014 is expected to increase 31%. It is time to act. That's the conclusion of Nebraska experts who say the state is not living up to its livestock potential. Livestock is worth more than $25 billion to the Cornhusker State. That's a key finding in a new report from the University of Nebraska. The combination of crop and livestock farming sets Nebraska apart. But the report suggests we may export too much of our products to be processed in other states.
Should we export corn and soybean meal, or should we feed it here? Should we export dried distiller grains, or should we feed it here wet? Should we take advantage of those efficiencies and those economies that we have by expanding the livestock sector here?
Expanding livestock would benefit corn and soybean producers and create thousands of new jobs and add millions in local tax revenue, mostly in rural areas.
And in areas of the state where livestock expansion makes a lot of sense because of the resource base and because of the markets and the hubs that exist around those products, we hope that we'll see that continue to expand.
The report concedes there are societal and environmental challenges, so say sustainable practices will be important in expanding hog, dairy, and poultry numbers. Nebraska is a national leader in 5 different agricultural categories. The USDA released its annual rankings this past week. Nebraska ranked #1 in cattle on feed and the amount of red meat produced. Nebraska produced 82% of the nation's crop of Great Northern dry edible beans last year and 45% of the popcorn crop. Nebraska's 8.3 million irrigated acres of cropland were also the most of any state, and about 15% of the nation's irrigated acres. A feedlot in Overton sentenced after pleading guilty to violating the Clean Water Act. Central Feeders Incorporated will serve 3 years probation and pay a $20,000 fine. According to the U.S. Attorney, the cattle feeding operation had livestock waste going into Mud Creek. It did not result in any fish dying or environmental cleanup costs. In addition to the criminal penalty, Central Feeders negotiated a civil penalty. It is anticipated to cost close to $39,000. There's a push to support meat processing in eastern Kansas. The nonprofit Kansas Rural Center recently invited ranchers, meat processors, and economic development leaders to sit together. They believe there is opportunity for a meat processing facility in eastern Kansas, along with storage facilities and related industries. Have a small acreage and a job off the farm but still want to raise livestock? This may be the answer. 4 goats.
I came here to show and have fun.
Piper Fisher came here to show her goat, but will leave with something to show her friends in Oklahoma.
They built Book of Live one about 5 minutes ago.
From the Pee Wee division to the older kids and adults, there's growing interest in goats like these.
You can raise on a very small acreage. Lots of folks that have these animals aren't in the livestock business. They have other sources of income, and it's kind of a hobby to them.
That's true of Bethany Gokenauer's family.
My parents are part-time farmers.
They make their living off the farm, but want Bethany to learn from farm animals.
Well, I think the best thing about showing goats is they all have different personalities, so no one of them is the same. They're more like people than any other species I show, I think.
67. Leaders with the American Boar Goat Association say interest is growing, and many find it easier to get into than showing cattle or pigs.
That allows anybody from the hobby farmist to retirees to the youth to older folks, that allows them to have an opportunity to raise livestock.
Kids love the playful nature of the goats.
If you run, they run after you, and it is play.
For Vicky Stitch, it all started with a donkey.
And then I saw the goats, and that was my next addiction.
Now she runs the American Boar Goat National Show with some 1,200 animals, taking place for the first time at the Nebraska State Fairgrounds.
Kind of like one big giant family. Everybody gets to see, and all their friends that they haven't seen in a year.
It's something many of us may tend to put on the back burner. Our health. More next.